Hello everybody, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to welcome you to live event number 75. 75, we're going to have to do something special. Oops, that's the wrong screen. We're going to have to do something special for 100. I think I'm at least going to change the color of the thumbnail to something more festive. I'm not sure what exactly. Hopefully that you can hear me okay. I have switched microphones this morning. Ronaldo, welcome. Good morning. This is your live event. So I am Dylan Klein. Hello, 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 hello. Yes, Jeff, Medf. I'm here to answer your questions. This is the time that we set aside every week to just chit-chat. Talk amongst yourselves if you like. WovianF, hello, welcome. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves if you use the @ symbol with the user ID to whom you are speaking. Then they'll know to respond to you, and they can respond in kind with an @ symbol. If you haven't found us yet on Sequencer, which is the Facebook group that we inhabit, Tadeus, hello. No worries, Dylan Klein music happens all the time. Meth, exactly, yeah. Don't type that too many times into the search thing, or into the chat. Will attract some attention that is perhaps not as positive. Now I've lost my train of thought. Hello everyone, Mrs. Webster. Hello Heidi. Hello, hello. Felusho Uthman. Hello, new user ID. Welcome to the live event. It's your live event, so please chime in with your questions. Be not shy. Find us on Sequencer if you want to continue the conversation outside of the bounds of our weekly event. And new dealio, if it looks like, now it's early, right? Like we just got started, so it's really not an issue just yet, but if it looks like I'm not going to get to your question, then post it please in the comments for this live event, and I can answer it when all is said and done after the fact. I think those are all the user IDs that I'm supposed to do and stuff like that. David Walsh, good morning, Jeff. So what are your thoughts about aging voices? Tenors get sort of lower and darker, it seems. What is happening? Well, it happens to us all. It happens to us all. Age will come for us. And feeling a bit dramatic this morning, apparently. Age will come for us. But age will come for us. And the thing is that the voice, they are, really small muscles, but they're muscles nonetheless. And as we age, muscle density tends to decrease, and muscles do atrophy as we get older. And at some point, then the muscles are just going to begin to kind of go into that state. Now, the best advice I have for us is to do your exercises now. The more that you go into your old age with, the better off you will be as you age. But of course, even the great Pavarotti was canceling performances and missing notes and changing keys of things as he got to the end of his performance career and ultimately the end of his life. Welcome, Mrs. Webster. It's good to see you as always. Let's see here. Whoa, little jump there. Huvian, thank you, Mrs. Webster. Thank you very, very, very much for clarifying that. Huvian F, please clarify that. Yes, correct. But no, it does matter. I appreciate the fact that you're very understanding about my mispronunciation, but please correct me if I pronounce your names incorrectly. I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing your names correctly. Thank you, Mrs. Webster. Hello, Karina. Jer, hey, I have a question. I want to learn how to do a strong chest voice, a tenor, but when I do bass, it's easier. Advice. I would ask you to think about what makes a strong chest voice. If you are a tenor, which you have indicated in your question, then your voice is going to respond differently than a baritone's would. And so power for you in your chest voice is going to be achieved in a little bit different fashion. You could probably work for a long, long time and never really have the kind of depth that a baritone might have down there. But if you emphasize the higher partials of your voice, then you'll find that you'll get, I hope that wasn't too clippy. You'll find that you'll have plenty of power and resonance. It's just how you achieve it. Where if you're a tenor, your mid voice and lower to mid voice is not going to resonate. I mean, it's not going to perform for you. You're not going to achieve the kind of power in the same way that a baritone might. When I do bass, it's easier. I'm not sure what that means by that, though. That to me brings into question, like, your fach, if you've accurately identified your fach. Mrs. Webster, your Wi-Fi is cutting out. Be right back. Okie dokie. Today, asked Jeff, please help me with destroying the swallow reflex of mine when I sing. I've tried absolutely everything you can think of. I'm so desperate to beat this. Ultimately, there's another thought. I'm not sure which video it's in. I think it's how to lower your larynx. And I go through some exercises on monitoring the larynx. Now I want to be very specific. It's about monitoring. Monitor. In other words, pay attention to. However, there are some schools of thought that would actually ask you to hold your larynx in place. I am absolutely not recommending that. That is not what I'm asking you to do. But in the video, I talk about laying your hand very gently across your throat so that you can monitor what it feels like and what is occurring. You're going to have to monitor it probably that way and some other ways as well, as we've talked about before. And try to become aware of the muscle reflexes that are causing you to swallow, and ultimately learn to do something different. That may mean having a high tongue arch in the rear of the oral cavity, or even having it slightly low for a little time in order to defeat that muscle reaction. Huvian, yes, okay. Altug, Jeff, how does twang help with chord closure? Good question. A very interesting question. If you already have good vocal fold adduction, then the twang doesn't exactly help with chord closure because you've already got the adduction. So I assume that you're talking about exercises where they have you doing like the wee, that kind of hyperglottic approach to singing, and it's particularly useful in the zona di passaggio below the secondo passaggio. So, for lack of a better way of putting it, the mix range of the voice, which I would prefer to call it the zona di passaggio, but the mix range below the break, the zona di passaggio, or the secondo passaggio, excuse me. And when you've got a vocalist that has habitually aspirated the vocal fold or abducted it, separated it, they've grown accustomed to singing into falsetto, then that twang, or some people call it like a witchy voice, can make it a lot, it can help them learn what it feels like to have a vocal fold that is adducted or closed. As it pertains to you, Altog, unless something has changed dramatically since last time I heard you sing, those sorts of exercises aren't really appropriate for where I've heard you. Like I said, unless something has really changed dramatically. Today, as try the swallowing muscles just engage and larynx shoots up and everything just becomes tense and blocked. Yeah, monitor. You're going to have to become aware of those muscles, and you might try using your tongue in a really disposed and lower position. I'm not really a fan of that, but if you're really having that much problems with it and the habit isn't breaking, you're going to have to do that. But if you're just singing your songs, if you're not doing exercises along with this, I wouldn't expect it to change. You're going to have to, and you're also going to have to limit yourself for some time just purely to the most comfortable range of your voice, right in the thyroarytenoid dominant range of your voice, and just work on that there. Kimberly and Clark Studio, how can I sing high and low notes without pushing, forcing, or reaching for the notes? And without straining, how can I breathe from the diaphragm? That's like a half a dozen questions in one. Let me see how I can take. Let's go from the back to the front. Okay, one, we all breathe from the diaphragm. The diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. What we hope to do is to influence the diaphragm's behavior, and we do this with a practice of expansion and engagement of the core body muscles. Don't take my word for it, but the notion of sticking your guts out to inhale and sucking them back in is largely erroneous. And practical singing, breathing for singing, involves a lateral expansion of the rib cage and an engagement and lifting of the core body muscles, and this includes the transverse abdominis, the oblique muscles, and to a certain extent the rectus abdominis muscles up towards the sternum. And that is what interacts with the diaphragm and works to keep it in a descended fashion. What we're doing when we breathe for singing is we're trying to prevent the diaphragm from lifting into the lungs. That action creates the suspension that is our support, our air column. And this works to create adequate subglottic pressure, air pressure below the epiglottis. Now, if you deal with that, then my suspicion is that almost immediately you'll start to see better action with the low notes and the high notes. Now, pushing or forcing in the upper register is almost certainly a twofold issue. One, if you haven't had good airflow or subglottic pressure before, which your question would suggest is true, then you will have achieved most of those notes with an imbalance in the vocal fold. That imbalance would be thyroarytenoid dominance, more muscle tension in the thyroarytenoid or chest voice than is entirely advantageous as you ascend towards your upper register. With adequate subglottic pressure, or airflow if you will, then you are going to create a more balanced phonation, more balanced singing as you ascend. This will also have the effect of balancing out your lower register, though you may have to practice for a little while with short vowel syllables in order to find a more optimized balance of airflow and vocal fold engagement if you've been squeezing up to this point. And that's just the beginning. My advice would be to start there, start in your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice range, your chest voice range, and then begin to make your way up towards the primo passaggio and ultimately above the secondo passaggio. The pushing and reaching for the high notes, however, depending on how much of a habit that is for you, you may need to begin your exercises in a descending fashion. So rather than trying to sing up to it, start by descending, you, and then start to do the ascending patterns. The reason why is because typically we reach and reach and reach for these high notes. Even the verbiage around it, the way we talk about it, is to reach for it, as if we're reaching up for it. We conceptualize it entirely from the standpoint of low to high. And what happens usually is that the habits form along those patterns. In other words, the habits are most aggressive in our singing when we're singing an ascending line. And if you start from the top, you can kind of circumvent them, learn what it feels like to have a more balanced approach in the upper register or even just in the zona di passaggio, and then try to remember what that feels like and sing up to it, achieving that same kind of phonation. Morgan, how do you prepare for an audition with a lot of belting? How do you breathe and belt without hurting your vocal cords? Okay, well, the breathing methodology doesn't really change. If you're breathing properly and adhering to the Apagio breath management system, you should be okay. Belting, I recommend that people not exceed a major second above the secondo passaggio. So if you are if you're a tenor, a typical tenor will have their secondo passaggio between F and F sharp, give or take, right? That means don't belt beyond a G sharp above middle C. And if you make that an aspect of your vocal technique as opposed to the only way that you sing those high notes, I think you'll probably be okay. If you are only belting and you are exceeding that, I think that you are risking In the short term, you're risking needing to take frequent and regular time off from singing, which isn't really that advantageous. And worst case scenario, you're risking some type of hemorrhage, damage, or lesions. But you're gonna have to really go for it to do that kind of damage. But but I believe that is entirely possible. So, but it's just an audition. Practice, practice, practice. Obviously, work on the high notes. Give yourself time to rest off of those high notes and high sections. You may also consider changing the key to make sure that you're dialing in your intonation nice and accurately. And also, if you really absolutely must belt, then bringing it down in range by several half steps and working your way back up to it will let you balance the amount of thyroarytenoid dominance you want to carry into that range of your voice so that you're only using as much of a belt as is entirely necessary to achieve the sound that you want. Too much belting and you'll go out of tune, typically flat. Felucio, Jeff, please, I always sing mostly off beat, and I really don't know how to sing tenor very well, and I really want to learn. Interesting questions, two sort of different things here. If you're off beat, you really need to focus on your counting. My advice to you is just to begin grunting, tapping, or nodding your head or something like that, along with the pulses of the songs. I would practice this without singing initially. To truly get accurate with your counting, you're going to need to learn to subdivide the beat. I don't have my trusty Dr. Beat handy, but if this is the beat, tick, 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 we can subdivide that beat into two equal parts. Tick, 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 tick. I would think of those as eighth notes because I'm thinking of this tap as quarter notes. Okay? We could divide it into 4 equal parts. Tick, 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 tick. 16th notes is what those are. As musicians, we learn to count them. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and depending on the meter that you happen to be in. If that's 4/4, that's 4. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, those are the 16th notes. It's entirely possible, too, to have a hemiola, which is a feeling of 3 in a division of 2. Triplet, 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 triplet. And that you will find occurs quite frequently in popular genres. It's really lovely, too. So ultimately, learning to count will help you stay on beat. Initially, just for now, just start sensitizing yourself to the beat and the pulse. Clap along, tap your finger, whatever you want. Listen to whatever it is you're singing and tap along to it. I don't know how to sing tenor very well. I'm not sure what you mean by I don't know how to sing tenor. If you mean the tenor line in bluegrass, well, conveniently enough, just 18 minutes ago, I released a video on how to harmonize in singing the tenor line. In fact, I get a little help from my cousin in Nashville on that. You'll have to check it out and see. Yeah. Dylan Klein, what are your thoughts on the effects of alcoholic beverages on the voice? I assume it may be dehydrating. Any other concerns? Okay, well, so many of you know that I lived in England for a while, and the National Health Service is the National Health Service. It's different from the insurance in the United States in that they really are committed to the public health because it's entirely funded by taxes and all that kind of stuff. And so there's tons and tons of preventative medicine, and they issue guidances on lots of different things. It's no mystery that the English do enjoy their beer. But just as I was getting ready to come back to California, they issued new guidance on alcoholic beverages, and they reduced dramatically the units of it. So, Dylan Klein, yes, it does dehydrate. Certain things are going to affect you differently than others, in my opinion. Everyone's going to be different. So, for example, myself, if I have a Sierra Nevada, which for a long time was like my favorite beer, it's so hoppy and so acidic that it just immediately makes singing a very, very bad idea. So you want to stay hydrated. Other alcoholic beverages just don't go well with the voice. I would suggest to you that consumption of alcohol impairs fine motor skill coordination. That's why we're not supposed to drive when we drink. Your voice is made up of very, very small muscles. And your ability to sing well is predicated on your ability to kind of control without controlling the coordination of those fine motor skill actions. So if you're drinking, your ability to control and monitor that will be slightly lessened, and it can impair your singing. You know, there's plenty of people out there that will insist they need, their dose of liquid courage before taking the stage, and far be it from me to begrudge anyone what I think of as the simple pleasures of life. But yeah, that's probably a pretty good amount of thoughts on alcohol. I'm going to take this moment now to do a little station ID. My name's Jeff. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. If I don't get to your question, or it looks like I might not get to your question, put it in the comments for this live event after it is published to YouTube so that I can answer it, or put it on the channel or whatever. It is important to me to get to all of your questions, but I also want to make sure that I adequately address the questions that I have time for within this hour that we set aside. I absolutely refuse to do super chat during these meetings. If you would like to make a contribution to the channel, you can find out more about that at jeffrolka.com, where we take PayPal and the Cash App and all that kind of stuff. Karina, honestly, there's a lot of different chord. There's two main chord closure exercises that I like, and they're in the videos. I don't really do the witchy thing much, because I find that's only appropriate for certain vocalists. It's not everybody that needs to practice that, in my opinion. But there's two ways that I like to approach this. One is with a we syllable, but we're looking for a balanced phonation, and this, you'll see this in the short exercises on the channel. We. The other one that I really like too is he with an H, and there's a short note and short breath. He. And that one's more challenging because the H forces the vocal folds apart, and it forces you to really learn how you're going to coordinate airflow and vocal fold engagement. The short breath also has the action of recycling the vocal fold so that you don't get the benefit of learning the adduction just one time. You have to recreate that adduction each time you do the articulation. That exercise is also very, very good for focusing on expansion and maintenance of your engagement throughout the duration of the exercise. So while you're doing that, you're really focusing on maintaining the lateral expansion through the rib cage and retaining the engagement of the core body muscles while you're inhaling and exhaling, both in and out. Altug, what age does voice change occur, the darkening, etc.? I think that's probably going to be different for different people depending on how they go into the latter periods of their lives. But I would expect it somewhere in your 60s. I would imagine. I think is when muscles begin to atrophy at a more rapid rate. Doromal XD. Jeff, why is that I'm used in singing in falsetto and belt in mixed voice, but when I try to sing in chest voice, it is so hard? Well, that's interesting because, of course, belting is your chest voice. But if you're meaning only in the mix, I don't know. The way that you're talking about singing does not suggest to me that you have a very good alignment of the vowels and overall kind of alignment of your singing voice. And it also sort of sounds to me as if you haven't necessarily spent a lot of time in the mid-range of your voice. You may start by just looking for balanced vowel production in the lower mid-range of your voice, say anything below the primo passaggio, and then work around from there. Deborah Sheng, how do you determine Fach? A lot of listening, a lot of singing, assessment of where the secondo passaggio is, and then overall evaluation of the qualities of a given voice. Richard Miller has suggested that it's not even the voice teacher's role, that it should be like a separate kind of thing altogether. I don't know if I entirely agree with that, because I feel like I have to come to an understanding of where those transition points are in a given voice in order to help them the most. But it's not a simple. There's no simple answer to that question. If you Wikipedia Fach, you can look at all the different things that are looked at in determining Fach. Jer, I say when I do bass because I'm in a choir, they help with the voice, but thanks so much for the advice. You got it. Mandy, hello. I'm going to be driving, so I won't be chatting, but I'm here and listening in. All right, well, drive safe, 10 and 2 and all that. Deborah, I'm a coloratura soprano. I struggle with low notes. Any tips? I'm wondering, okay, so you identify as coloratura. That's cool. If you're singing primarily classical materials, it's much more common for the classical vocalist, particularly in the female vocalists, to extend the cricothyroid dominant singing voice lower than male vocalists might. If you are not transitioning into your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, it would make your low notes rather difficult, to say the least. By the same token, that is not developing that skill set. If you want to sing in the popular genres, it becomes more important. If you're just singing in the classical realm, it's not as crucial. Though, in my opinion, the more we learn about the function of our voices, the more, the stronger we become in their entirety. And in particular, I think about the balance between cricothyroid dominance and thyroarytenoid dominance. And if you're an athlete, let's say, okay, I love rock climbing, and I'm a very avid rock climber. Rock climbers very frequently start to look like they're always bowed forward because all of their muscles are pulling inwards, and the average climber who's getting into the intermediate average realm won't have developed the antagonistic muscle groups. So as you progress, you end up doing more push-ups and pushing kinds of things in order to make sure that you have a balanced approach. This has the effect of making you stronger and more stable on the wall or on the rock in general. And if I relate that to vocal technique, then developing the thyroarytenoid voice, though it may not necessarily be entirely necessary for the genres that you're singing, it may help with the overall balance of phonation and allow you to have a bit more presence and resonance, even if you are practicing bringing the cricothyroid dominant singing voice lower. Mrs. Webster, I have to sing C's that resolve to B every 8 bars. Saying DMM on the notes, so it's difficult to sustain. Voice tires quickly on break, like a mezzo Sputnik. It's Skyfall by Adele. I assume you meant to write mezzo soprano, but I love mezzo Sputnik. I think that I just have to have, that's amazing. I just want to say that 1,000 times over. Mezzo Sputnik is beautiful. And is that supposed to be on the notes? And I find it very interesting. I suppose if you were C's that resolve to B, what would that even be? Oh, if you're in G major, that would make perfect sense. Getting kind of low. It's getting kind of low for a mezzo. Just back off of that a little bit. Think light and bright. Think light and bright. Frederick, could you analyze the voice of Peter O'Toole and give advice on what the best exercise is for finding your best speaking pitch? I don't think I'm going to analyze Peter O'Toole's voice. I'm sorry. But the best advice for finding your speaking pitch would involve some short vowel sound exercises, maybe heading up at least into the primo passaggio and then descending back down and around the remainder of your voice, finding the lower area, and then just kind of coming to where you're comfortable. Of course, we don't simply speak on one note. We do go all over the place when we speak. But yeah, I think I'd start there. Start there with some short vowel sound exercises. Mandy, thank you for reminding me of sequencer. Thank you. Yes, if you want to continue the conversation, Facebook group, look for it, sequencer. I have yet to prepare a handy-dandy link that I can post. I did not do that, but I will someday, probably. Bishy J Official, is it possible to be a pitch-perfect singer? Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't see why not. We are only human. And of course, vibrato, if you're singing with vibrato, and here's the conundrum. In order to have a relaxed system, vibrato occurs in a relaxed system. If you are not allowing vibrato to occur in your voice, then you are artificially enforcing muscle engagement on the vocal fold. That has the action typically of making us sing a little bit out of tune. So if you're going to allow the vibrato to occur, you are inducing a little pitch fluctuation. If you are forcing the vibrato to stop, then you are in fact tempting being a little bit out of tune, typically on the flat side. So, that being said, I've heard many vocalists sing in the studio, and it's I'm thinking of one in particular who was just amazingly in tune. I mean, we'd put auto-tune on them, and we'd watch the meter, and it would just basically not move. It was incredible. But that also begs the question of well-tempered versus just intonation. The human ear will typically try to eliminate all pulses from any given interval. With a unison, that's perfectly fine. If you're singing a unison, there shouldn't be any pulses. The frequencies should match. But if you're singing a major third, well, in a well-tempered tonal system, such as a piano, all of those intervals are slightly out of tune so that we can play in any of the 12 major minor keys without having to retune the piano for the key that we're in. But your human ear will want to sing that major third. If you're singing the third above a fundamental, like a tonic, so like let's say you play an F and you want to sing an A, and you sing it so that it sounds like beautifully harmonious. If you then immediately turned on a tuner, you would find that you were 13 cents flat. So just intonation and temperament are not the same thing. And your question, I think, challenges that notion to a certain extent. What intonation system are we wishing to be in? And so to sing pitch perfect in a well-tempered environment requires you to effectively sing out of tune with your own inner ear. Cool, huh? Mandy, random question. Jeff, for no other reason than I'm curious, what kind of alto do you think I am? Gosh, you know what? I'd have to look at my I'd have to look at my textbooks a little bit, Mandy, before answering that question. But based upon, I don't think dramatic. I'd have to double check on lyric just to make sure, but I don't think dramatic based on other alto voices that have more low register response than I have seen you demonstrate. Kimberly Ann Clark at Bishy J Official. Mandy Cummins, I'm typing when stopped in traffic. Good. No texting and driving. Deborah Shang, some days I can sing to an A6, other days I can barely hit a C6. How can I sing with consistent range every day? There are any number of things that could be occurring with your phonation. You know, the sort of initial thoughts on that are assess your airflow and assess your vowel formation, assess your vowel modifications through the secondo passaggio and over the secondo passaggio, and make sure that they're consistent. If your vowel formation is inconsistent from day to day, then your singing will be inconsistent from day to day. Striker, hello. Capone, just popping half marathon tomorrow and all is done. Secret weapon, I hum now and then, mind and muscle need both. Brilliant, Capone. Have a wonderful half marathon tomorrow. Karina at Striker at Karina. Jerica, would the new daily alto warm-up, tonal onset video, and apagio breath video, in that order, be a good series to exercise with? Yeah, that sounds really good. The apagio breath video, do you mean the diaphragmatic breathing warm-up? If that's the one you mean, I'd still put it. Yeah, I think that's still a good order. I like that order, and I like that subject matter. You might try flipping the tonal onset video in front of the daily warm-up and see how that treats you. Have an awesome day, Mandy. You're probably gone by now. A good day, but a gay day is a happy day too, indeed. Striker, bye, Mandy. Juan, salut. Hey, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Dylan Klein, music at Striker Kane. Dylan Klein, good day to you as well. Juan, I would like to know the name of the notes of tenor range. Exactly, please. Well, they do vary from vocalist to vocalist. I believe strobes for the tenor vocalist goes to, see, that's G3, G2, and like, that's not going to feel great. You know what I'm saying? Typical tenor, then where is it? To D? Is it D3 that then you get to thyroarytenoid dominance, up to G3, and then C4 is typically the primo passaggio, and then F4 is typically around abouts where the secondo passaggio is, and then C5 in that general area is where the transition to the falsetto range of the voice occurs. I see a lot of people have already gotten in there. At Dylan, typically there. At Striker, at Juan. Thank you for taking care of that, Striker. Tenor's vocal range, there you go. Striker, Striker Kane, thanks at Mrs. and Dylan. Amkar, how to prevent choking kind of feeling while singing. Goodness. Stop and assess what's going on. You shouldn't feel like you're choking. It sounds to me like you are quite possibly forcing the larynx down too low. Work towards a more neutral phonation. Stick to your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice for a little while and just do some short notes. He. Just to, I suspect you're really pushing down hard on the larynx, and I would advise you to just back off a little bit. Mrs. Webster, Mezzo Sputnik was not a typo. I'm beeping for the longest time on my break, and the word they want me to use is dim. It's closed, difficult. It is, yeah. Be light with that. And speaking for myself, when I'm singing an M sound like that, like a try to have your lips just very, very lightly touching. Not a lot of contact with the lips. Juan, you're welcome. Bienvenido, Teresa Oliver. Hello. Big smiley face. Chalamet. Jeff, hello. Striker, use a translator. Chalamet, I have already asked you this. I sing in a fake voice, they say. What do I do? Goodness. Can you tell me, it doesn't look like I've got a lot of backlog in questions. Could you please tell me a bit more? Like, what do you mean fake voice? Oftentimes our singing voices don't sound exactly like our speaking voices. We're using our breath and in the balance of the vocal fold in a different way. Typically, when we talk, there's not as much engagement of the core body muscles, and as such, there's a lot more muscle action. There's a lot more thyroarytenoid dominance in the voice, and so it sounds a little different. Additionally, with that increase in airflow, you get a lot more soft tissue resonance that occurs in the oral cavity. So we do sound a little different. Can you tell me a bit more? Striker at Teresa. Teresa, new subscriber. I like watching your videos. They're really helpful. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate that. Welcome to our live event. I do this every Saturday. Most every Saturday. I've only missed a couple, and I try to let you know in advance if I'm not going to be able to make it. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Hi, Striker. Dylan Climate, this is more because I'm curious, but what are some of your vocal favorite artists? Who inspires you to sing? Your biggest influences: Tom York, Paul McCartney, Jeff Buckley, K.D. Lang. Dietrich Friedrich Dieskau. Cecilia Bartoli, a little bit. Peter Pears. I love Peter Pears. He's like a kinder, gentler voice. That's pretty. I mean, that's a good start, I would say. I mean, there's probably a few others in there that I could dig up. And certainly I have my passing fancies with this artist or that artist. So I went through like a Wilco phase, which I'm not really into Wilco right now. There's like a band that I just heard of called Great Lakes something or another, Great Lakes whatever. I thought they were pretty cool. I listened to a bunch of their stuff. Sam Smith. Love Sam Smith. Someone else I just thought of. Death Cab for Cutie. I like Death Cab as a sort of total package. Like I think that's an incredibly beautiful mating of a voice and the musical texture. And I know it's not overly complex music, but I like it. Karina. Good luck on your recital. Dawn, last week you said the keyboard player was the last hired, first fired. What did you mean by that? Signed, a wondering keyboard player. That's just an old saying that when you've got a band, like let's say you've got a band, usually with a band, you've got your core group of instrumentalists. And, you got your drummer, your bass player, your guitar players, your lead vocalist, and they all get together. And then at some point, they're like, yeah, we need to fill out the sound. All right, well, let's get a keyboard player, And so they hire a keyboard player to come in, and then, they might run a little while, and sort of course of action unfolds, and then as maybe money starts to get a little tight, the first person to go is the keyboard player. I'm thinking of like the Beatles. Of course, they hired Billy Preston near the end of their career, and then. In the aftermath of everything, as they unfolded, he was probably the first one to go. But it's just an old saying. It's like you could say the same thing about the auxiliary percussionist. Unless you're a Latin band, you're probably not gonna start by choosing your auxiliary percussionist. They're gonna be added later on, and then they're gonna be the first to go when the band is regrouping and trying to stay afloat. Teresa, sure, I love pop music. Dubstep. I don't know if I know dubstep that well. I produced a track that I believe was dub or something like that. But I would have to listen to it a little bit in order to understand it. the production of that track that I did required a lot of like what I would call found item or found object sort of usage. So like I was taking and manipulating sounds and trying to make it sound very metallic and aggressive and things like that. But I don't think that's dubstep. Jeff, please answer my question again because my iPhone was dead. I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back and listen. This will be posted to YouTube immediately following the event, and you can listen to my answer then. Karina, Jeff, do you think that One Moment in Time is a good audition song? Any suggestions for a tempo song? A tempo song? It really depends on the audition requirements and what you're auditioning for. If the requirements call for that style of song, and it satisfies the range requirements of the part that you're auditioning for, then it may very well be a very good song. If you've never sung it before, that may mean that it's not such a good choice for that audition. Typically, I recommend that folks find music that they have sung many times previously if it adheres to the audition guidelines. Mrs. Webster at Jeff Rolka, the C they've got me beeping on is C5. Is that one octave above middle C? Yes. Karina, up-tempo song as a contemporary to One Moment in Time. Again, it's about the requirements of the audition, and I don't want to speculate on this without knowing what the audition is for and what the requirements are. I feel that would be somewhat irresponsible of me. I would also want to go back. I mean, I've heard One Moment in Time, but I'd have to go back and listen to it and find something complementary to it because it's just not fresh in my mind right now. Striker at Karina. Chalamet, fake voice, not my voice. Trying to copy someone. Okay. If you're really not trying to copy someone and you're singing with your voice, then I would kindly advise you to just ignore these people that are suggesting you're singing in a fake voice. If it's your voice and you're just singing, then sing. Don't worry about what people are telling you. It's unfortunate, you know, not everyone is a guitar player expert, I think, because not everybody owns guitars. But everyone has a voice. And so, unfortunately, sometimes I feel that there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts of voice that exist. And that's fine. You know, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't know if you necessarily have to take it terribly seriously if they're not a trained vocalist or even a musician, even just a musician who isn't a vocalist. I don't think it's necessarily imperative that we take their thoughts on our voices entirely to heart. Now, if someone's telling you, well, you're singing out of tune, that's different. You know, evaluate that, check it, see what's going on. And if that turns out to be true, then there's lots and lots of resources. I mean, on my channel alone, there's lots of resources to help you balance your phonation so that you come into tune. But if they're just saying you're singing with a fake voice, well, then usually something to the effect of, thanks, I'll think about that, works really well. Jerica, I did respond. You'll have to go back and listen to the event. Mrs. Webster, hug at Karina. Teresa Oliver, oh, and also I'm using my mom's account. So I'm a tenor. Very cool, Teresa. I mean, whatever your name is. Go right. Dawn, P.S. Hope your air on the Big Island is a little better today. Thank you very much, Dawn. Likewise, I believe you're on Harbor Bay or Bay Farm. Boy, it was rough yesterday. It's way better today. The wildfires in Napa have been just horrible. Folks, I'm getting near the end of the event, so now if it looks like I might not get to your question, please post it in the comments for this live event so that I can answer it when we're all done here. Striker, I presume that's me. Can you explain why an ascending octave jump arpeggio, 5-note up, is so much more difficult to do than a descending? I practice descending too. Ascending, I find it challenging, rather quick pace. Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're... I mean, there's an octave involved here, but an octave, I mean, do you mean an octave arpeggio? So it's like 1, 3, 5, 1, you know? If that's what you're talking about, typically ascending patterns, and actually I talked about this at greater length earlier in the live event. I'm not sure, I don't know if you were here quite yet or not, but ascending patterns typically engage our older habits around singing. So if you've ever had the habit of squeezing as you ascend, that habit is more tenacious with ascending patterns than it will be with descending. And I presume this is because typically we build these patterns by trying to reach up for high notes and by singing all these ascending phrases and squeezing out these high notes. And so when you do the descending phrase, those habits don't tend to get as, they're not as tenacious on the descending pattern. And there's an opportunity there to be able to relearn how we phonate. So when you do the descending pattern, try as best you can to be very aware of what the phonation feels like, what's the orientation and sort of internal geography of the vocal fold and your engagement. And remember that physical experience so that you can try to recreate it on an ascending pattern. Usually there's some turnaround time, so you'll have to practice descending patterns for a while and then switch it to include ascending and descending patterns. But even then, if that's the case, I would still start with a descending pattern and just include an ascending pattern to it. So you might start off with wee, 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 but then as you progress, wee, 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 matching your phonation at the octave. Mrs. Webster at Dylan Klein Music. Striker Kane, Jeffrey Allen, Exercise 31. Karina Chen, I am a fan of Jeff. I cannot go to sleep without being here. I know it's like the middle of the night, too, where you are. I believe you're in Hong Kong, which is so wonderful. Dylan Klein at Mrs. Webster. Mrs. Webster, yes. Dylan Klein, Bishy J Official. Do children sing more in mixed voice, hence the brightness and easy access to high range? Interesting question. Of course, they're still growing, and particularly, you know, they have a smaller instrument, and then as they grow, that instrument changes and gets bigger. Of course, in the male vocals, it undergoes a rather dramatic change when they go through puberty. But that's interesting. I mean, when I think about past experiences, I mean, I think you'll find all sorts of different things. You will find children who are using more of a cricothyroid, thyroarytenoid mix from time to time, and others won't when they sing. I haven't worked with truly a child in a while. I'm just thinking of my daughters and how they sound when they sing, because there's a lot of singing that goes on around here, as you might imagine. And I don't really get the sense from hearing them sing that they're really using a mixed voice very much. Well, I'll tell you one thing that children really don't have is they don't have the habits around phonation that we do as we age and become adults. So we institute, in many respects, a difficult transition from thyroarytenoid to cricothyroid by kind of focusing so much on the thyroarytenoid dominant muscle groups. And then, depending on how much or how little we do that transition into cricothyroid dominant can be very challenging to learn to do. You're welcome, Jerica. Striker at Karina. Will do. TY, thank you. You're very welcome. Dawn, current band leader always seems on the edge of saying, don't really need you, bye. So that makes sense. Love Billy Preston, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. On the plus side, you can always branch out on your own. You know, if you're as a keyboard player or a piano player, you've always got your own accompanist right there. Jeff, why is it that I'm fluent in singing in falsetto and belting in mixed voice when I try to sing in chest voice so hard? I addressed that earlier. You'll have to go back and listen for that. Jeff, do you play an instrument other than piano? I play trumpet, some piano, baritone, a little saxophone, and I sing. Yep. I think of myself as a piano operator. I am also a guitar operator. In that I play them well enough to accompany myself and play parts and things like that. I do also play saxophone and flute. I can also play the drums. I might be more of a drum operator. I am particularly good at auxiliary percussion, shakers, tambourines, things like that. I really, really take great satisfaction in cutting those parts on albums because it's just such a simple thing, but it adds so much, and I love playing them. Deborah, what is your opinion on whistle notes? I haven't really thought about it all terribly much. Nice if you got them, I guess. In my own personal studies as an artist, I haven't really pursued that at all. But people seem to really like it, and if that's the direction they go, I wish them absolutely the best and all the luck in the world. And that's really about it. Hello, Super Aced. Chalamet, how can I be clear while singing? Work towards balanced phonation. Align your vowels and balance the phonation so you have good airflow, good subglottic pressure. Noah, I will try to remember that. If I see Teresa Oliver pop up again, I will try to remember that you are Noah. Thank you. Jeff, why is it my whistle range is... Well, you're saying from C sharp 6 to F6. When I try to make it higher, it goes up to F sharp 7 to A7. Well, if you're trying to make it higher, then it should go up there. I mean, I would think that would be a desirable result. If what you're saying is that you're skipping over everything in between, the whistle tones, I don't know a whole ton about whistle tones or how it works. Most people don't, in fact, because the epiglottis is closing over the vocal folds, so it's unclear as to how much the vocal folds are actually operating on the whistle tone register. The epiglottis creates a sort of aperture that you get the whistle from, so you may just be skipping over all those notes. Mrs. Webster at Noah, Dylan Klein Music, do you consider tip of tongue position while practicing? Yes. I've heard generally keeping it at the bottom of lower teeth is a good place, but experimenting with just letting it chill more. Thoughts? In singing, in your vocal practice, keeping it lightly touching behind the front bottom teeth is generally advantageous in that it allows you to focus on the motion of the rear and mid tongue. When you're singing words, it's going to move. So we want it to be flexible and released so that you can move it around a little bit. We certainly don't want the tip of the tongue mashing those front bottom teeth. And if it is, a little bit of, out and on the lip can be a good practice. I know the lip, lift, vowel changes, but sure with the front part, if anything. There you go. Jeff, that is what I needed to hear. I'll also post a sequence for the example. Do you know where the question comes from? I don't know where the question comes from. Hello from the Philippines. Nice. Mrs. Webster at Teresa Oliver, who's really Noah. I didn't know you played tenor sax. I am miserable at the brass winds. Oh my gosh. The last thing in the world you ever want to do is hear me play a trumpet. My sister's a flutist. Cool. Kay Hemel, certainly appreciate your videos for vocal practice. They are a great help. Wonderful. My support when singing is improving. Wonderful. I seem to have lost some range, and I hope I will regain some of it. Yeah, you may go through a little bit of an adjustment while phonation, singing, is balancing out. But as you as you balance airflow and vocal fold engagement, that should facilitate the range up to the secondo passaggio quite nicely, and also facilitate your registration event over the secondo passaggio as well too. Okay, my granddaughter, 12 years old, has been asked to audition at state level. She's very excited. Wonderful. Karina, I do play quite a lot of musical instruments. I really love music, and I love instruments, and I love the colors and the things that they do. It's really cool. And Kay, do give your granddaughter, my like, hurrah, 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 do your best, focus on you and focus on your music, and worry not about your judges and all that kind of stuff. Focus on the music. Mrs. Wester, props to you. I can't for the life of me sing and play tambourine at the same time. I don't know exactly if I can either. I could probably do that because I can play and sing most of the stuff that I do. But I don't think I've ever done that. I'm not sure. I've always been just doing aux percussion or backing vocals. I've never done them at the same time. Yeah, walking and chewing gum might be harder because I think the chewing gum might be arrhythmical. You're very welcome, Chalamet. It's a pleasure. I really do enjoy helping. High five at Mrs. Webster. Karina Chen, Jeff, which one do you support? Pure vowels or vowel modifications? Vowel modifications. Everything, all the reputable sources that I am aware of suggest that vowel modifications are the way to facilitate transition technique over the secondo passaggio. That being said, if the vowel modification is abundantly obvious, you are doing too much. Art Gallery, A. London. Hello, some conductors say we don't open enough our mouths to sing open vowels. But when I'm singing, I feel very worried that if I open my mouth too much, maybe I displace my voice or untune. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. There is the thought on this is changing a lot. And it used to be that the contemporary wisdom, like we all know this is true, right? It used to be that you had to just open your mouth super wide to sing vowels, and that is changing a lot, particularly for the oo and o vowels, rearward focusing vowels. There's a lot of speculation now amongst vocal teachers and singers that a reverse megaphone concept is more appropriate for ultimate resonance of those vowels. So if these are my teeth, this is a horrible illustration. If these are my teeth, right, that's a megaphone. And for the oo and the o, it would be more of the megaphone going backwards to create more space in the rear of the oral cavity. Chalamet in India. Singers wake up at 4 a.m. and practice. They call it riyaz. Is it really necessary to do it? Well, when in Rome, I mean, you know you're going to get your practice time if you start at 4 a.m. When I was at university and I was a teaching assistant, it became difficult to get practice time during normal times of day. So I started showing up at the School of Music at 5 a.m. in order to practice. And I knew I could get at least an hour and a half of uninterrupted practice time at that time of day. So, yeah. Everybody, thank you so much. I'm gonna get going here. Awesome live event. Thank you, everybody. Sequencer, A Global Voice, on Facebook is where you can continue the conversation if you wish. My name is Jeff. Until next time, take really good care of your voices, enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you either here at our live event, or I'll see you in the comments, or we can find each other on Twitter where the conversation continues. Bye. See you in the comments, or we can find each other on Twitter where the conversation continues.